really I really feel like on a God-given mission, right, to change the face of Africa, right, and to really help people get access. I really want payments and financial services to truly be an afterthought. I was hired my first job my first job out of school, and I was like, man, I came all the way to America. I finished college, and I got fired. I think about it, it's actually like tears of it. And I left. I got fired, and then I said, okay, I need to figure out how do I make money, right? And so it was just like whatever I could do. I even got on California unemployment for 2 months or whatever it was, and then but kept looking for work.
How does that feel? What you're describing now was the vision you had then.
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually went. I went to go look at one of my earliest decks, and like PayPal for Africa.
How have you seen the fintech ecosystem evolve from when you started to 2025?
So I think in the early days,
from a simple idea to empower everyday financial life across Africa to building Nigeria's leading mobile money infrastructure, Tayo Oviosu has done it all.
With degrees from the University of Southern California and Stanford Graduate School of Business, Tayo brings both technical depth and strategic vision to his work.
At the core, he is on a mission of building the best financial systems that truly work for Africa.
And the impact speaks for itself. Paga has been named one of the Financial Times' fastest growing companies in 2024 for the second year in a row, and has appeared 3 times on the world's most promising fintech companies list.
Recognized as CNBC's Entrepreneur of the Year in West Africa, Tayo is shaping the future of finance across the continent.
My favorite African proverb is like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that going together means like being brutally honest, being open, and doing right by others.
Tayo, what does it take to build a business for 16 years?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So Paga 16. The first thing is really, it's the team, right? I think we've been super fortunate to have an amazing group of people, men and women, who have really poured themselves into the vision and taken it on as their own. And that is not just me, my co-founder, JL Abraba, CTO, Eric Chijoke, who are all there from the very beginning.
And still there.
But all the way through the organization, you feel this, and you get this pulse. And I think there's something about how we run the business that drives that, and I don't know if I can pinpoint it on my, and we talk about our values as literally, and maybe because I'm very literal about some of these things, like when you tell me values, it's not some very hairy thing, it's literally like, what do you make time for? What do you really care about? So in a company, your values are the things that you literally promote for. And so we say ownership is a key value. And so if you don't take ownership of your work and demonstrate that, there's no way you're getting promoted to Paga. In fact, you'll probably be exited from Paga, right? And then, so when we talk about all our values, I think that ownership one especially really is something I found that staff and team in Nigeria really like, actually. People want to have ownership. People want to have the ability to do great work and the freedom to do great work, right? And to take something on and do their best and see how it comes through. So I actually think that's the first big thing that has helped us, get to where we are today. And then alongside that is our investors, and they equally have also bought into this vision. And I remember we've had two moments in our journey where it was just tough to raise capital and stuff like that, and they have stepped in, and I remember someone was asking me recently, Tayo, you haven't announced any raises, anytime, since 2018 or something. I'm like, man, we've raised more money since then than we ever did, but we just don't talk about it,
Why?
And I think it's partly we just want to be heads down and do our work, right? But we actually are very conscious also that we want to build a sustainable business that doesn't depend on outside investing. Doesn't mean that we don't want to raise we actually want to raise outside capital. But we want to be able to like know that our business we control our own destiny of what we're trying to accomplish. And so that way, whatever we're raising is truly to accelerate growth, right? And it's not about the core of the business itself.
That makes sense. I think one of the things I think about when I think about Paga 16 years is that so many things has changed.
Yeah.
Like obviously people have come through the company. Right. The terrain of what the market you're building has changed so much.
Dramatically.
So I want to talk through that.
Yeah.
Those changes, right? First from what have you seen? How have you seen the fintech ecosystem evolve from when you started to 2025? Yeah. And those key moments, what has that meant for Paga? How did you change with it as well?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, there was nothing called fintech when I started. Like, I remember like sharing the idea with people and be like, what are you talking about? Like, like trying to get it. And the first thing I actually even had to do was make this BlackBerry app just so that people can get the idea. I mean, with BlackBerry, like back then. And then the second was really to get the regulator to properly regulate the space. They had actually already taken a stab at it. And so by the time we engaged them, it was more about formalizing how do people apply, how do you get your licenses, etc. Sometimes I wonder if we should not have done that because it then opened up, because then they now put an ad in the paper. And in Nigeria, once you put an ad for a license, everybody and anybody is going to apply for that license, right? So I think in the early days, it was one of these things about like spending a lot of energy training and educating the CBN, the police, the NDIC. I remember going to the NDIC, it's the National Deposit Insurance Corporation that insures all the deposits in the financial institutions in Nigeria. I remember going to them and saying, you don't have a pass-through insurance. And they asked me, what is pass-through insurance? I'm like, what? You don't know what pass-through insurance is? And so I actually had to do a few sessions with them and brought a lot of material, did write-ups to train them on what pass-through insurance was and why it was important for our business. Because in our business, when you keep your money in Paga, that money actually sits in about 11 different banks. Now, God forbid anything happens to one of those banks, if they go under. We want the NDIC to look at the funds in that bank and say that actually this money in Paga belongs to the millions of people, that this money in this Paga account belongs to the millions of people who have accounts with Paga in a certain ratio, and guarantee that insurance for those people versus look at it that just belongs to one entity. And it took NDIC 3 years to finally come up with the policy around pass-through insurance. And so, but I was really happy that they called me to come and be the chairman of occasion, guest of honor, when they did. And that was one of the proud moments. It's one of those underreported things, but like actually long-term value for the country, that they now have a pass-through insurance policy and they've been keeping it up, So I think early days was really around like educating and at the same time fighting some non-market forces who are trying to shape things the way they wanted it to be shaped rather than what was best for Nigeria or what the market was trying to drive for. To fast forward today where we now have, I think, a lot more, and then at some point there's this period where I feel like APIs just became available and anybody was like a fintech,
Yeah.
And now I think even today I saw on Twitter someone saying, don't start fintechs anymore. We have enough fintechs. And I think there's some truth to that in the sense that, I won't say don't start fintechs, but I would just say there's some truth in the sense that on the payment side, at least, there's now real clarity of who the players are. And I can't think of many white spaces within payments, but I can think of a lot of white spaces that build on top of that, of what we're all doing. And so I think today it's a lot different because back around that period where everybody's just coming in, it was always like, even with investors, they're like, what about this company? What about that company? What about this company? And you had to again explain about just staying steady to our strategy, staying steady to what we're trying to do. I think today it's a little clearer to people, at least people who are in the industry, of like, okay, what's the difference between OPay, PalmPay, Paga, MoneyPoint, Flutterwave, Paystack? What are they doing that competes? What are they that's different? It may not be as clear to the general public, but I think to people who are in the sector, They understand where the competition is, where the cooperation is, and who's who.
That makes sense. And so when you started versus now, what you're doing has been different in many ways, right? Yeah. So remind us about what the idea was that first time. And also, I'm also curious as to why did you decide to do this, right? So what was it then, and how has it changed? Because you have changed a couple of times.
We have. I mean, what got me started was just my own frustration carrying cash with me everywhere. I had used PayPal in the US. I just returned from the US. This is 2008. And I'd used PayPal, and I'd even used PayPal by SMS, which they ended up killing, and nobody used it. But I actually tried it when it came out, and I loved it. And I said, why is it that I have to carry cash everywhere, right? I have a mobile phone. We all have mobile phones. Granted, not all of us have smartphones back then. Most people had just, the feature phones. And I said, why can't we use those mobile phones as a means of connectivity? I used to work at Cisco, so for me, it was all about connectivity. And use that as a way to transact over the internet, right? And that's what got me going. And I was like, you know what? For any country to be successful, payments and financial service has to be an afterthought. Mm-hmm. And so I set out to build a PayPal for Africa. And in that thinking, it was consumer and merchant, right? It was, we want to enable consumers have a wallet or an account that they can keep their money in, they can link their banks to. They can link their cards, just like you do PayPal, and transact anywhere and give them convenience. On the other side, we want merchants to be able to accept money from anybody, regardless. So those are the two ideas that we started with. And as we kept going, we quickly were like, wait a second. We could understand how, people in our level of education, et cetera, would understand how to use an app back then. But what about the mass market? How do we train them, right? How do we get them to use this thing? And the epiphany that I had one morning was, oh my God, there's somebody that sells provisions on every street corner. There's a Baba, in my street, Baba is there. Mm-hmm. If you talk to my 6-year-old son today, even he knows where Baba's house is, And he can go to Baba and ask him for bread and not give him money, and we'll give him later, And likewise, if we give him too much money, it will change. There's trust. So I was like, why don't we get those people who are on every street corner to be the one that offer the service? So we train them. So we train fewer people, they offer the service, and people just know that, oh, okay, rather than me go to the bank, stay in traffic, go to the bank, I'll just come here and get my money. Yeah. Rather than me stay in traffic, go to DSTV to pay my cable, I'll just do it right here.
Like Paga agents.
Right? So that's how the idea of Paga agents came up, right? And then when you looked at, so that was the first epiphany around this. And then the other epiphany was like, oh my God, the regulation that came out was really bad in terms of KYC and limits for individuals. It was 3,000 Naira per transaction. Even back then, that was $20. I'm like, it was too low. Nobody would use this. And then the KYC rules are still the same today, but there was no NIN, there was no BVN. So there's no way to KYC. You had to physically come in and give us your documents, and then we make copies and actually keep paper. So there was no way to scale that. While at the agent, we had control over the amount. So we were also the first company, to my knowledge, in the world that created agents where the agents did the transaction for you. We later, of course, learned of M-Pesa and all these other guys who the agent will deposit the money into your account and then you do the transaction. Very different. In our cases, the agent just does the transaction for you. And so that was a big aha moment around doing that. So we got going, scaled out the agent business, and so a lot of people knew us as an agent business. But we always said, look, when three things change, we'll come back to the consumer business.
Right.
When the KYC limits were changed, when you could digitally verify someone's KYC, and when the mobile operators allowed us access to USSD, so we can work on feature phones. All those three things took over 5 years to get done. And that was heavy lobbying, heavy engagement with the industry.
So you actively
actively working on it, on these three things. I'm very clear. At the same time, still building, but actively working on this. And we were using the consumer product ourselves. A few people were using it organically. Because once you go past the KYC, once you figured out how to use it, then there was value. But it couldn't scale it. And all of those came to head in 2020. So I really think of it like 2020 is when our consumer business truly
11 years after.
11 years after. So when I say that to people, when I tell people that story, they're like, what? So like really your consumer business is only 5 years old? I'm like, yes. It's, even though we've had it, but as a business, it's still a very young business. And then now you can actually do everything in one go, right? You can download the app, you can KYC and you're good, And so that was a big change on the journey for us. But in 2020, about 3 years ago now, so 2022. Early 2022, I was, one of the things I do, and I've just look at as my way of giving back in the ecosystem, is to, sit with other entrepreneurs, share ideas, glean from them when I have issues, but also like share, help them when they're thinking through stuff. And I remember the one person who sat with me, Yele from Onboard, and Yele was talking to me about some of the challenges that he was having. And I was like, wait a second. We've solved that for ourselves, like some of the payments and challenges that he was having. And I'm like, well, where did you do that for ourselves? And oh, wow, Paystack can't do that for you. Flutterwave can't do that for you, but we do it. Because we're like the bank, like we do this stuff ourselves. And then I spoke to another entrepreneur and it was a similar kind of response, and there were like 2 or 3 people. And I literally went back to my team and I said, guys, we're sitting on something here. Like this stuff that we've built for ourselves, what if we opened it up and let other people use it? And everybody was like, what? I'm like, yeah. It's like, then, and of course the immediate argument was like, but wouldn't people just compete with us? And I'm like, sure, well, why not? And like, it's okay if they do that. I don't think they would, but if they do that, that's fine. And I was like, look at Amazon, right? Amazon had built out all of this data center infrastructure for itself and had built expertise around how to manage servers, etc. And said, what if I open that up to other people and let them use it? And that's what they did with AWS. And if you look at AWS today, one of its biggest clients is Netflix. And one of Netflix's biggest competitors is Prime Video, right? But I'm confident the AWS team don't care what Prime Video is doing. Yeah. We want to make Netflix good. Like we don't care, right? And so we made the first big pivot at Paga in 2022, which was we decided to open up all our infrastructure to let any third party build upon. There's not a single thing that we do in our own direct businesses that you can't build on us. You can build it. And in many cases, I've actually had situations where I'm even pointing to people, this is how we did
So basically, like, Paga is now a payment infrastructure for businesses as well.
Yes. So the way we think about it is that Paga overall is first an infrastructure business. And that was the pivot. That overall, we're first an infrastructure business. And our goal is to deliver payments domestically for Africans, as well as to give them access to global financial rails and to global commerce. And then we open that up to other people through Paga Engine, which is our B2B business. So people can see that on pagaengine.com. And then we also use it in 2 use cases, which is one, Paga, the consumer app, and Doroki, our merchant app. So we're building an exact same infrastructure that we offer out.
Break it down for me, right?
Yeah.
You said when you were pivoting, your team had been like, oh, but what if the other guys, so like the Flutterwaves and Paystack, they compete? And you said you don't think they will. So when you say payment infrastructure, my thought is you're building exactly the same thing you're doing because they're all payments infrastructure. So what is Paga Engine doing differently that makes it different? Like obviously they can build it if they want to, but fundamentally sounds like they are solving 2 different problems.
Got it. So when I was referring to companies competing, it wouldn't be like the Flutterwaves or the Paystacks. It would be somebody else who wants to build on our infrastructure and build equivalent of say Paga, the consumer app, or Doroki, the merchant app. Right. So for example, Order is a competitor to Doroki on the restaurant side of the business, and it competes. right? But they're also building on our infrastructure, and that's totally fine. And we have conversations and we're even like, oh yeah, this is what we did in Doroki. Like, how do you think about this? But ultimately, when you look at Doroki's restaurant product and Order's restaurant product, it's different. Yeah. Like, we just are thinking a bit differently about the same problem and addressing it differently. Some restaurants will like Order. Some restaurants will like Doroki, right? I don't think they'll take 100% of the market. I don't think we'll take 100%
I know,
of the market.
It is the same engine.
Either way, you're on the same infrastructure. All good.
Okay.
Right?
Why do you call it a pivot? It sounds more like a business expansion because the two things that still existed before were still existing.
Yes. I think of it as a pivot because we hadn't thought about it at all in our strategy. And it's significant enough because it's a B2B play, and we were coming from a consumer mindset. So it's also a different team. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of serving the customer. And it felt like a very big decision. And it was at the time, right? In hindsight, you were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like, it was not an easy decision to come to do that. And so I look at that as like the first big pivot that we made, right? But in terms of competition in that business, we do compete with the Flutterwaves. We do compete with Paystack. And I see those two as key competitors in that market. Both of them have gotten, where they are today by doing card processing online, right? And that's where they cut their teeth, right? But we also work with them. Like, if you use your card on Paga, it may be processed by Flutterwave for card processing, right? We now have our own direct card processing through CyberSource. So not all transactions go through Flutterwave. So there's competition amongst this stuff, right? As well.
That makes sense.
So, but I think the key difference, to come to your question, very key difference is that we have the ability to host accounts and wallets for people in a way that they can't. Flutterwave works with Wemabank. Paystack, I think, just changed to Fidelity from Titan Bank. I just got that note yesterday, so I'm assuming that's the case. But we are the financial institution ourselves, right? And our licensing, we're the highest level of the fintech categories. Could they go get a license? Sure. It's not about license, but it's that we've actually spent 16 years building capability,
some of this stuff.
Doing this stuff, right? Yeah. And so we're much further ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going back to the beginning where you had said, so you wanted to build PayPal for Africa. I wish I have a question on this. That's still the vision before. So
sure.
Answer that question when you want to.
Yeah.
So you want to be PayPal for Africa. You came back and realized, I think how we should get into the market is through the agent network. And then at some point, when those three things align, then we go to consumer. Yeah. And it took 5 years for any of that to start coming into effect, and 11 years for you to properly start consumer.
Yeah.
What kept the business going at the time? Like, because someone could have said, okay, my business is not viable right now. Let me wait, so let me go build something else. Yeah. So you knew that this was not the right time, but you still wanted to build something. And then, like, what was the mental model? How did you just, because I'm asking from other startup founders now, right, who are thinking, I have an idea and I think it's going to be great. Yeah. But I'm also probably realizing that maybe we're too early. How do you decide to navigate that? What frameworks do you use?
Yeah, I think we're crazy. Like, literally, right? Because you look at it and you're like, there's no reason why we shouldn't have folded long time ago, right? Like, long time ago, just like, look at it. But we never had that discussion to say, should we fold?
Interesting.
Yeah. Amongst the founders, amongst the investors, that was never the question. And I think for all of us, and there's a bit of craziness among all of us, like the founders, investors, like I think we just long-term see what we're trying to do as a major impact on society. And we were already seeing the signs of the success. And not quite where we want to get to, not quite as fast as we thought when we set out, but this is a game changer long term, right? And I think what sustained us initially, when you think about it, is that we're able to get that agent side just running. And that agent side enabled us to be able to invest in continuing to develop on the consumer side, even though we didn't have customers. So it was funding it. And then our investors, because they were bought in on the long term of this as well, were also stepping up to ensure that the business is funded. But in 2014, there were two key moments for me in 2014. One was a conversation with our lead investor. I was having lunch with him in Joburg. He's Nigerian, but he lived in Joburg at the time. And he said to me, and we were both in Silicon Valley together, right? He was an investor in Silicon Valley. I was an investor in Silicon Valley. He moved back. He actually moved back before I did to Nigeria. And I remember sitting with him in San Francisco, actually, and him telling me about, like, encouraging me to move back, but also telling me what we're challenging. So fast forward, he's invested in my business now, and we're having this conversation. And he says, Tayo, you cannot run Paga like you would in Silicon Valley. This is 2014 where it started. He had invested 2 years before. It's like, you actually have to think about getting profitable and having the business control its own destiny. Don't expect that you'll just have the next round possible easily there, right? And that was like whoa, my biggest investor is telling me this. Right. And then he related even their challenges raising capital. And so if investors are having those challenges raising capital, it's going to trickle down.
Yeah.
Right. And so I came back, had a conversation with the team, and I said, you know what, we have to get Paga profitable. And we're not going to do it by slashing and burning. We're going to do it in a sustainable way. And the first step, and then we talk through how do we do that, right? We're like, look, we can't get involved in every purchasing decision in this business. But if somebody needs to buy a phone, they need to understand that, okay, we want an iPhone, Abi. So where's the best place to buy an iPhone and get the best price and negotiate it like it was your own, again, ownership. Like, this is your own money you're using to buy this phone. Negotiate the price, and also help the team understand what the finances look like. How do we help them? They may not understand all the different metrics, etc. But how do we break it down? So we actually worked hard to figure out, breaking it down and helping people understand revenue, gross profit, EBITDA, right? And I'll always say in town halls, I'll show these numbers and I'll talk about it, but we'll start with a basic slide and talk about how, revenue is vanity. Gross profit is what pays our salaries. So that's what we need to care about. And so any sales incentives are always around that. And that's the number you all should care about. We don't talk about it publicly. Please don't talk about it publicly. But that's the number you should look at. Because if that number doesn't cover our operating expense, it means that investors have to put money in. But we want to get to a point where it covers it, and we're controlling ourselves. And it took us another 4 years to get, so that conversation with my investor was end of 2014, another 3 years, full 3 years, 2018, to get Nigeria net income positive, our business in Nigeria. And we've been net income positive since. And then now our group company is EBITDA positive, right? So we've actually really grown from that perspective. We're not yet net income positive at the group level. But doing those, achieving those and building that muscle has really helped us in how we getting here.
Have you raised since that conversation with the investor?
Yeah, multiple times.
Okay. And what do you think contributed?
Yeah, no, look, I think a number of things. I think one, clarity of what we're trying to achieve has really helped. And I think investors are understanding that. And then I think two is people seeing the maturity of the business in how we operate and how we execute the business, right? The financial maturity of the business, right? And actually we just literally in the last 2 weeks just got our first credit rating as a business, and which to me was amazing. First time we're doing a credit rating and we get investment grade credit ratings from 2 different agencies, which again just shows the business is maturing and how they see it. And that's really important because then we can now go to the public markets, right? If we choose to raise capital from the public markets. All of those things just show for investors looking in that, okay, this is a well-run shop, right? It's not that we'll put money and then Tayo is going to go buy a Mercedes somewhere or whatever it may be, right? They're on ground, they're here, and so I think that definitely gives people comfort from that perspective.
And how do you manage these investors? Because now that you're doing this 16 years, my assumption is that investors who have invested in multiple rounds or who you still have relationships with. And For venture capital, the idea is like 5 to 10 years. They want to see a return. And then you're doing 16-year anniversary. But you still have investors that are still rooting for you. So even though you're talking about like the sustainability of the model, it feels like it is conflicting with what the venture capital model and what we're told is supposed to be. So have you managed to carry your people along?
Correct. I think that's a very fair point. I mean, look, first of all, investors and entrepreneurs, I say it's like a marriage. It's a relationship you have to nurture. You have to spend time on it. We have, and I think our cap table is evidence of when we started the business as well. We have about 35 investors on the cap table, individual investors, and then we have the institutional investors. And, and all of them, I have met every single individual investor but one. And I still want to meet him. I know at some point I'll meet him. We'll make it happen. But we definitely talk over email. But for all of them, I think it's about making time for them. I can't imagine any of my investors reaching out to me and I wouldn't take a call. Not one. Or me going to a town where they're in, and me not reaching out to say, hey, are you around? And let's meet up. It may not be every time, but once in a while, okay, are you around? And then definitely, creating a cadence of how I generally communicate to everybody to try and make it easier, right? Here's a general communication, right? For the institutional investors, quarterly reports, just being on track with all that. Actually, someone said my quarterly report before I came here. So here's a quarterly report, we'll talk about the board meeting. And then for the individual investors, they get something every other month, right? Of here's what's going on with the business. And then they can write back, they can email me and talk about it. So I think that's really important. And I think then the second thing is keeping them abreast of where we are financially, what's going on, right? And not waiting till there's something, an issue. So you can think about it this way. If somebody hasn't been as aware about how the business is progressing or what the challenges are, when there is an issue, it's going to be weird for them to just sort of jump in. They don't know, did you make a mistake? Did you not, did you not think about this? And so now I can't do that. I can't do it in the same level of detail with every single person, but I certainly do with the most key people who are as engaged and helping us with it, right? And so I think that has also helped in building our relationship. That said, there was nothing that's going to give me more joy than giving them an exit, a great exit, because they've been there with us, all of them, especially the very first checks. Yeah. Right.
Can imagine.
And I've said to them, the day that happens, I want you to tell the world, not because it'll help everybody.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's going to be important. So I think the next phase, I like to say we've done Act 1. In Act 2 of Paga.
And Act 1 was?
So Act 1 is we've built a profitable business. Mm-hmm. We've hit product market fit across all our business lines. Mm-hmm. We've built brands that people recognize, people know, people trust. And heck, we're processing $1 billion a month, right? When I think about that, it's whoa. I remember when it took us crazy months to get to $1 billion, first $1 billion process, right? Years. And now we do more than that in a month, right? Even with the devalued rates. If it wasn't devalued, it would be 4 times that. So that's Act 1. Now Act 2 is about, and we've established Nigeria. So Act 2 is now about taking Paga to the world, and to the tier 1 African countries, right? So that's from a business execution. But also in Act 2 is giving our investors a great exit, right? And finding the next set of investors who would take us to be a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And take us to that next level of scale, right? And that also, in that Act 2, is also in scaling the team, right? And in building out our capacity around the team as well, right? My role probably would change at some point in Act 2 as well, right? As what my day-to-day job is. But I'm super excited about what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're doing it. And I would also imagine in Act 2 there will be other partners, business partners that will come in, right? Who've seen what we have done, and say, let's work together to accelerate the scale.
So you've been thinking of creating your own cryptocurrency exchange. You've been trading on WhatsApp. You already built a huge customer base, but now it's no longer easy for you to manage that customer base. What if you can actually leverage a managed API service? If you are looking to create a cryptocurrency exchange, then the OBX API is the platform that you want to build your cryptocurrency exchange on. We are giving you free deposit wallet addresses for all your users. We are giving you the ability to allow them withdraw from one API. We're also giving you the ability to allow them swap from one cryptocurrency to another, all in one managed API. So you don't have to deal with liquidity, you don't have to deal with compliance bottlenecks, you don't have to deal with a lot of other issues that comes with the operational issues that comes with creating a cryptocurrency exchange. All you need to do is plug into our API, get your developers to build your own platform for you, and then you're able to go live in weeks instead of months or years. This is your time to move from WhatsApp transactions to your own mobile app. Request a discovery call by visiting obx.finance/OTC-desk. When you submit your API discovery request, you're going to speak with me where we're going to discuss your eligibility for our API services. Secondly, we're also going to go over your business, how you operate, and how we're able to support you. On this call, you're able to discover everything about the OBX API service, and we're going to do a complete demo of our product, and then we'll be going on from there.
I assume that we've talked a lot about the pivots and some of these decisions.
Yeah.
And you've had over 1,000 employees go through the company. That's a lot of people. So which means I know that you fired a lot of people, right? And firing can be such a hard decision.
Sure.
You haven't fired anybody?
No, we have.
Okay, yeah. So firing could be a hard decision, right? So the question I have is around, what are the hardest decisions you've had to make, people related and then business related? Obviously, deciding to do a new product line could have been a hard decision, but I mean we're sunsetting a product or we made a mistake and we're realizing that we made a mistake on a business level or a people level.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think when it comes to people, it's really hard, but I think we continue to refine. I won't say we're perfect yet, continue to refine this. But one of the things that is clear to me is that when you hire someone, you should hire them for the company, not for the role. They have to be good at the role that you're thinking of, but that may not be the right fit for them, but they may be good for the company in another role. And so I think that's one. Two is also giving people the opportunity to move across teams if they want to and they're able to do the job. One of my favorite examples today, my colleague that runs our remittance business started out as my assistant, and now she's the GM of one of our biggest businesses. She runs the remittance, and man, you see negotiating. I was just just sit down. I'm glad I'm not on the other side of her negotiations, right? Because she really takes this thing on, and she really gets the business, understands it, and pushes hard, and so. But I think that we've just given that opportunity within the company for people to be able to do that, right? But when you hire someone, I think in the first 3 months, you know whether it's going to work. If you're really paying attention, if this person's going to be, it's going to work out. And so the difficulty is if it's not going to work, or if it's not working, making a decision to let the person go. And it's harder in Nigeria because, you think about the economy, you think about oh my God, there's all these people probably depending on this person and all this stuff. Or even in Ethiopia where we have a team in Ethiopia as well. But the problem is that if you have someone who's not pulling their weight, it affects everybody else. And then potentially if they're doing really bad work that actually impacts the product, then that actually is double affecting everybody because other people have to come in to clean their mess. Right. And so, I don't think letting anyone go should be a surprise for the person. I do think you have to have very clear processes to give feedback. There's a debate about whether PIPs work. I don't think they work. We do them, but I don't think they work. I've only seen one situation in 16 years where someone took a performance improvement plan positively, actually took a demotion. I mean, of course, his colleagues didn't know he took a demotion, but he took a demotion. And actually did well coming out of it. And to the point where he eventually left Paga on his own. But even after he left, I wrote him his recommendation. He moved to Canada, so it was a very positive outcome until today, where he sees me, and, actually I saw him recently with his wife and kids. And it's a very positive engagement. So but that's the rare occasion. I've only seen one. So I'm a believer in trying to be more decisive about that stuff. Make sure you do reviews, and I guess I came from Deloitte Consulting where it's up or out, right? And so every quarter when we do reviews, you just know that some people are going to be let go, right? And you just have to. But letting go of people is always a tough one, and I've had some really tough moments with that. But I think I'm able to empathize because I've been fired before.
You have? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I was fired in my first job out of school, and so I did electrical engineering at the University of Southern California, and one of and I concentrated in semiconductor chip design. Now, semiconductor chip design turned out to be my most difficult set of courses. But that's one I went and said, I'm concentrating in, Meanwhile, in the other courses, I was the one like teaching other people, etc. Like I was acing those courses. In chip design, I was getting B pluses. Everywhere else, I was getting A's. So that was lesson one. I should have focused on what I'm really good at, right? But anyways, I got this job with a startup in Los Angeles that was quite innovative and doing something amazing. They're basically reimagining the cameras that we use in these devices today. And it was an 8-person startup. Busted my ass, worked hard. The CEO used to be a professor at UCLA, so he was also like teaching me, but I was definitely way in over my head. Like it was just clear from very early. But I was like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to try and figure it out. 3 months in, he called me into his office and he was like, Tayo, we've tried, right? We've, had you work on the weekends so you can try to learn. We've come in, help you. We even let you design this chip. We sent it to Taiwan to get fabricated. It looked like everything on the design was going to work. It didn't work. We have to let you go because that money we could use for somebody else. And I was devastated, man. I was like, I literally started crying right in front of him. Poor guy. I'm sure he was like, what do I do with this guy who's crying in front of me? And then, and I remember driving, and it was about 45 minutes to get back home. Driving home and just going, and I lived in a house. I still lived in the same house I lived in college, like 15 of us in that house. And my room was on the top floor. And so I just went to my room, locked myself up. And I was like, man, I came all the way to America. I finished college and then I got fired, So I'm like, what am I going to tell my mom, I think about it, it's actually like tears me up. But I left, I got fired and then I said, okay, I need to figure out how do I make money. So I actually went to work in the mailroom. This was during election season. And I was like packing mailers and then I was doing calls in the evening, right? And so it was just like whatever I could do. I even got on California unemployment for 2 months or whatever it was, and then but kept looking for work, right? So since I was by campus and it was in the fall, so I went back to campus recruiting. But I got a job. Then I got another job, and then I went to that, But fast forward, so I got another job. First, I got another job doing database management because I could do SQL, etc. And then I was coding for them. And then I was still recruiting, and then I got the Deloitte job, and then that took me to San Francisco, right? And so I did Deloitte for about 3 years, then business school at Stanford. And when I was at Stanford, I called the guy who fired me. And I said, thank you. Because if he didn't fire me, I wouldn't be here. I would have been a lousy semiconductor chip engineer, right? The one bringing the team down, right? Meanwhile, at Deloitte, my career was amazing, right? I was great at what I was doing. And in 3 years, I was already at a post-MBA level before I went to the MBA school, right? To get my MBA. And so that was, for me, very eye-opening of like, okay, if it's not working for someone.
Sometimes it's just not the right place.
It's just not the right place for them.
Yeah.
It's not about them. It may not be about them, the individual, right? It's just not the right place for you. Maybe you're not the right role, And so maybe we should let you go because then you can find what that is, right? And so I think me going through that experience makes it easier for me to actually have that kind of a conversation. And it's rare now that I'm the one, having that discussion with someone, but I did once this year, and I said, I want to have this conversation with the person, right? To be the one to deliver the message, right? And it's tough. It's really hard, right? But I think that's something that I can empathize with. Yeah.
That makes sense. So before we start talking about just the people you're talking about, or you're going to talk through other very tough business decisions, decisions you've had to make.
Man, there've been quite a few. I think, or maybe you may say mistake. Right? Like one mistake that I made that was very public was that when we relaunched our consumer app, when you could now KYC and had all these things that we agreed on, I was of the view that people want single purpose apps. So one app for sending money, one app for paying bills, one app for investing, one app for this. Not a one app that does all these different things in it. So we launched the money transfer app, right? And then we started getting all these negative reviews, and it doesn't work. This, and so we sat down and called about 300 people, and I sat in on some of the calls just listening. And it turned out that what people were saying is that everything that they had on the Paga website, they wanted it on the app. And I was like, oh, shucks. And this was something where person after person on the team had told me, Tayo, we're making the wrong decision. Like, I remember one of my colleagues, Ovie came to my office, and Ovie was not even working on this app. He was on another team. And he's like, Tayo, do you have a moment? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I think we're making the wrong decision with this app. Why are we doing a single-use app, right? But I was so insistent. And so I literally had to come to the team and say, I called a meeting of the product team and I said, I got this wrong. And I'm sorry, right? But we have to pull that app down. So we literally pulled the app down and I said, we have to rebuild. And let's give the market what the market is asking for. It's not about me, right? And that was a very public, thing. I don't remember how we explained it to the market. We literally just pulled the app down. And then we rebuilt, and then when we did, then it's been positive since then, right? So I think that was a tough one, but
another one
was a tough pill to swallow. A tough business decision we had to make was around how we expand. It was very clear to us in 2018 that we needed to diversify out of Nigeria, right? To even hit our vision. We wanted to make it for 1 billion people to access and use money, right? There are not 1 billion people in Nigeria. And the question for us was, do we do that in Africa? Or do we look elsewhere around the world? And so spent quite a bit of time trying to understand various markets in Africa. And then I went to India, I went to Philippines, I went to Indonesia and Mexico, and ended up deciding that we should launch in Mexico. Had to convince the whole team around that, and then convince our investors around that. And there was like a big power. They actually, a bunch of them came to Nigeria to discuss this, and then we got going on it. And we spent the better part of 2019 working on this, and early 2020 had everything lined up, and then the pandemic hit. And the pandemic hit, and then investors didn't understand it. We're trying to raise money at the time, and it was just like crazy, wild west raising capital. And it was just like also anything that just wasn't clear. It was just like just didn't work. So we had to pull back those plans. But meanwhile, our CTO had moved. Him and his wife were the last flight out of Ethiopia, moving to Mexico. And his wife, Heather, had never been to Mexico. And so I'm super grateful for her for many reasons. But this one really hits me, that she made the sacrifice to move her life to Mexico because it was the right thing for Paga, for Eric to be in Mexico. Because they were thinking about moving to the US instead. And now, they have a wonderful child, and, in Mexico, they've been there many years now, and they're, the child's a citizen, they're residents, but the decision to then walk away from that after all the time and energy we had invested, like we literally had everything lined up. We had our Mexican partners who had invested in the business, and they're still shareholders now, but like they had already invested. We're clear. We're like how we're going to go into the market, what we're going to do, how to be different, etc. We'd even started hiring. We'd hired a couple people. And so walking away from that, making the decision to walk away, that was also really hard, right? Especially because I had personally invested, like I had been the one going, right? And I was in 2019, I think I was in Mexico for at least a week every other month and a half or something like that. Like, and it's a long way to go, right? So that was another really tough call for us.
Makes sense. We've talked a lot about the business. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about like you as a person.
Yeah.
What are the ways that you have changed? Obviously, like it's 16 years, so it's a lot. 16. It's many changes.
Ton of changes.
If you kind of just break it down a little bit, and like the most pivotal ways that building the business you feel has fundamentally like maybe altered.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, gosh, man. I think I have learned resilience in a way that annoys me, actually. In some ways, I don't know how to say it, right? Like, one of my investors, I love him to death, Arjuna, said he says to me a few times, and I think it was last year, he said this, last year, Christmas, he was like, something to the effect of like, I really, appreciate your resilience, And I'm like, yeah, I get what you're trying to say, but man, like, I don't want to be resilient. I just want to like thrive, just like that. But I think running the business for this long, facing different headwinds and different moments has taught me to compartmentalize things, right? In a way that I didn't have before, right? As I'm talking to you now, there's like 3 or 4 big things happening, but I can't control those, right? So why am I going to stress about that? Like, there's no point. Like when I get there, when they'll figure it out. Okay. So it's really taught me that. And I think that ultimately that compartmentalizing helps resilience, right? And I've learned not to let my highs be too high, my lows be too low, and how to sort of come out of things, right? I think from my wife, I've really learned, from Afi, I've learned just the idea of importance of taking care of my health and importance of exercise and importance of like, and I actually come to love running, maybe not as much as she does, but I certainly love it. I enjoy it. I love that personal competitive. I'm not competing with somebody else. It's myself that I'm going after. And I guess the other part now is like, with 2 kids, 6 and 3, they've really changed my life. Like, I think to the point of, realizing, and it's interesting because when I set out in my career, I didn't imagine having kids. I actually didn't want kids.
Oh.
Yeah. And when I met Afi, I was like, oh, someone else who doesn't want kids. Like, awesome. Like, that's great. Then
what happened to you? Were you both?
Yeah, first of all, it was me, actually. Like, it changed for me. And it's like such an odd story. But anyways, it changed for me. And then took a minute to be able to convince her. And now I'm just like, these kids are my world, right? Like, and they are, have really helped me also learn that there's more beyond the work. There's like so much more beyond the work. I knew that, but like, there's so much more, but it's also kind of cool the times when they ask about the work, even though they get tired of it quickly, So, but the funniest moment I had recently was I was telling my son the story of how he was named, and I got his name.
What's his name?
His name is Nisho. Nisho, yeah. And it's a Japanese word for a rising sun. And I got his name. I was inspired for the name from a book by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, his memoir, which is Shoe Dog. Really great book. Recommended for everybody to read. And it tells his story all the way up to Nike going public. So the early days of Nike. And as I was telling him this story, I was like, "Oh, but you know Nike, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "He's Phil Knight is Mr. Nike, you know." And my daughter Eliana, sitting across from me, looks like, "Well, you're Mr. Paga." You know? And I'm like, "Oh God," you know. And so now they're like, "Mr. Paga." Okay, but she's like she's so witty, and loves telling stories, makes us laugh, you know. And so the two of them have really changed like how I think about my time, right? And I'm a big believer that there's nothing called work-life balance, actually. That is just an integrated life. And, you know, and I think the company has to respect that. The individuals understand that, and there's a give and take, right? And so anyway, I think the two of them, and having, you know, these kids who are living their life, you know, giving me so much joy, so much pleasure, and really bringing this bond into our family, and making me realize that actually spending time with them is so precious, you know. The other day, my son was like, you know, I missed dinner. I was actually at home, but I missed having dinner with them. And I'm like, "Oh gosh, you guys have eaten already. I wanted to eat with you," you know. And then he was like, "Is it because you didn't get to eat with your daddy like you want this?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, like you're only 6." But yes, like, you know, the fact I didn't have that experience with my dad, like it's always precious when I have it with you guys, you know. And so just that is something that's really been a major stay in my life now as I think about it.
Okay, that's just really good, really great answers. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're very vocal on Twitter with views that not a lot of people agree with.
Sure.
And your wife as well has like a business, right? And my initial question was like, how does that help? Right? And how does that work? Building two amazing businesses. So it's business, but it's also your lives, and you guys have a life together. But then there's also the part where, because her business is also very successful, there's a public persona there and there's a public persona. So sort of like, how do you marry all these facets, right? And how do they integrate? Or like,
So the great thing, I think, with Afi and with me is what you see is what you get. There's no difference. Like the person you see on Twitter is the person I am, right? The person you see on Twitter for her is the person she is. So we don't have any, and actually I always say this to people, like, because I always say, "Oh, you know, my memory is not the greatest." So the best thing for me is just to always be consistent. You know? So if someone's, you know, like, if you tell me something I told you years ago, I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like something I would say." Like, you know, like, because I am just generally consistent. And so I don't have a persona one place and a persona another place. Like, it's just the same. I don't know why anybody follows me on Twitter, to be honest. Like, I feel like, you know, I'm only there for the vibes and for Chelsea football. And then, you know, I say whatever I'm saying in my politics. But to your question, I think there is like two of us together as entrepreneurs building businesses. It's not easy having two entrepreneurs in the house. And especially if there are moments where, you know, one person's low and the other person's also low. But otherwise, the benefits are like we understand generally what you're going through and can be a support, you know, in those moments to each other. And can also help people with the blind side. Like when I can't think of any issue I'm trying to tackle at Paga that I haven't taken to her, right? And sometimes like she's like, "Okay, like chill, like, you know, let's talk about something else, you know?" But she has great insight, right? Around like now knows the team, knows people. She may not have met them in person, but has heard of them, right? Has a view perspective on some of them she gets to meet and interact with. Is a user of our product, of two sets of our products, who actually gives us good feedback as well. And so, you know, so I think for me that benefits a lot, right? And then likewise on her side, you know, there are things that I'm able to contribute to help with her business, maybe because like I've had experience investing, so I can help her with deal negotiations, etc. But generally, for me, it's actually like a world completely different from mine. So when I'm engaged, it's actually like I'm learning, and it's like just I know nothing about, like, you know. And like today, she, you know, just went to go look at a massive mango farm, you know, and I'm like, that's great. Like I love mango, right? But like, you know, how can I help you with this? Like, you know, what are the things you're thinking about?
How do you guys manage the low lows?
The low lows are tough. And I think both of us have things that we go to, right? So for her, and then I try to like especially for her, I try to then be an encouragement to go do those things, right? So for example, like she loves running, right? And she just like is in her element when she's that. She loves competing in sports. So she, now plays, frisbee, was playing flag football. So I think the lows for her is like trying to encourage her to go back into those things and not stay there, right? But you have to be there for a minute, and I have to remember to like not solve problems at that point, because we just want someone to listen to. That's probably my biggest, listen to her. That's like one of my biggest learnings in the journey. For me, I actually think it's actually that I have to come out of it on my own a little bit more, less about what I go do, and distractions. And sometimes it's like meditation, sometimes it's like just go for a walk, right? But it's me coming out of it.
Have you ever been burnt out in this 16 years? Just like, I'm tired of work, I'm tired of business.
I've never had, when people describe it like, so it's interesting, like 2 years ago, last year, I came to a realization that when I get asked this question, I'm always like, no, I can't think of a moment where I said I want to throw in the towel, So I haven't been burnt out. But then I came to realize, actually, no, I've had moments of burnout, right? And actually, there was one of our investors does this thing where they bring together their portfolio CEOs around the world every year, and we're at one of these retreats. And it was there, I ended up realizing one of the sessions that there are moments that I have burnout, but I just come back through it. Right. And so it's not so, and then the epiphany was like, you don't have to think of burnout as like this one massive thing. It's like, hey, you're in this down moment right now and you're just tired and you just want to like chill. And then the thing is about figuring out like, how do you identify that moment? And literally I was like, for me, and they're asking me some questions and I was like, I think like I go get chocolate. Yep, that's one perfect sign. Like, you just need some sugar, right? Like, and also some tips about how to get out of it. So for example, one of the tips that I did for a little while, but I don't do that much now, is like if I'm working from home and I'm feeling burnout, go jump in the pool, swim for 15 minutes, take a shower, like come back, just leave what you're doing, walk away, right? So I do walk around like the compound. I'll just like walk around the compound, take the dog for a small walk around the compound, right? Just like let it go and then come back again, right? And so it's about, so I have moments of burnout, right? And I have moments of, but I think the big sort of like in my head, like, oh, throwing towel, I've never had that actually, fortunately. I've had the pressure, right? I think during pandemic, the pressure of like, do we let go about half our staff, right? I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. We had the list drawn out. Everybody had drawn their list. It was now on my table.
Did you do it?
And I ended up saying, I'm going to ask the team, what should we do? Do we all take a salary cut? So I first went to the leadership team, asked them, because I was asking if we're going to take a salary cut, that they're going to take a deeper cut and not get paid back. And for a longer period, then we would ask the rest of the team. And they all said we should take a salary cut. And then I went to the broader team and they all agreed as well, we should take a salary cut. And that's what we did, so we didn't fire anybody. But that was tough. I had 2 nights I didn't sleep at all. I was just like, I didn't sleep. I was just like, it really weighed on me.
Was it the right decision?
And it's hard to say, right? I mean, I think it was a good decision because that was just such a weird time in the world. Like people just didn't know what was going on. Like, and I actually didn't get out of pandemic mode, I think, till 2022, right? 2023, right? Like it was a long time for me, like in terms of that, just like fight or flight mode of like, we just gotta, and so I hope we never have another pandemic like that in my lifetime.
We all hope so too.
It was like horrible. I don't want to go through that again. Yeah.
Makes sense. Back to Paga. So you guys are now in the US now.
Yes.
As a remittance product, right?
No. So
okay, explain it.
Yeah. So we and this is probably, I would call, the second pivot that we're making at Paga.
First one to infrastructure.
The first one is the infrastructure pivot. The second is really about bringing multi-currency capabilities into the infrastructure.
Okay.
So what does that mean? We want Africans to be able to not just transact domestically, but also to transact internationally. And we want them the ability to have access to global financial rails, global commerce. We want them to have access to stable coins. We want to have access to crypto, right? And live free, right? And thrive. And so we want to build these capabilities into the infrastructure and offer it to other people through Paga Engine, use it in our own consumer use case, use it in our merchant use case, right? And so the first sort of realization of this vision is launching a fully fledged US banking product in the US in partnership with the US bank. So what we've done is Paga US is a proper bank account, FDIC insured up to $250,000. You get a physical debit card. You get a virtual debit card that works on Apple Pay, Google Pay. And the account is in your name. We don't touch your money. It's all the compliance around this was intense.
Imagine.
It was intense. It took us a long time.
How long?
And we spent about 18 months working on this, right? Compliance in tandem with building. And very expensive to get through. But we're really excited about the product and where we're going with it. So the first product and the first offering is to people who have a U.S. residential address, right? Whether you're living in the U.S. or you're living in Nigeria, wherever you may be living, the key is that you have a residential address that we can actually tie to you. So it's not for everybody initially, but we're very much working on creating the service to be for everybody. And the idea is very simple. It's that, I want you to get to London and be able to transact without worrying about your card not being accepted or whatever. Even the Naira cards that are now, they allow them to do some dollar transactions, they're not accepted at all, right? And because, hey, it's Nigeria, right? Or your bank is giving you some crazy, ridiculous exchange rate, etc. So within the banking product, there's of course remittance in there, but it's not a remittance first product, it's a banking product first, right?
And it's for Nigerians in the US or Africans.
It's focused on it's going to be for Africans in the US. We started with Nigerians, but we're going to open up to other Africans as well. And so, for the person who's buying to the US, this is your bank, right? When I moved to the US, I struggled to get a bank account. I eventually got a Bank of America account, and then I struggled to get a credit card. And then the first credit card I got, I actually had to put money down for them to give me credit, $1,000 for them to give me $1,000. Then I think it increased to 5,000, etc. But I always had to put money down, so it was a secured card. So we want to change all that, right? And give you products that actually give you savings, give you credit access, right? Proper credit access. It's not a gimmick. Sending money home by remittance doesn't increase your credit. I don't know why that's the positioning. There's a company that's positioning around that. But anyways, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, that doesn't give you credit. It's actually a proper credit product that would do that. And so that's what we're building out initially for consumers, but really it's about bringing it into the infrastructure, and then also serving businesses.
Why the US? Because most African businesses are expanding and doing the UK first.
Yeah, or Canada maybe.
For doing Canada as well, and then I think Paga would be like one of the first. I mean, there are a few remittances that have done like US sending, but no one has really tried. So why the US?
Great question. I mean, look, I think as we thought about it, we said, look, the fundamental truth is that the reserve currency of the world is the US dollar, right? Even me as I am, I have no reason, and I love my European friends, but I'm like, what's the euro? I want my money in dollars. Do you know what I mean?
I want my money in pounds though.
Really? See, I don't. Yeah.
Because when I convert it to US, it's higher.
Yeah, but every time I go to the UK, everything's so much more expensive. It's the same number.
Yes, but
it's more expensive. So I want it in dollars. So and I think the US dollar is going to remain that reserve currency. And so our strong view was that the US dollar is the first currency to go with. Not to say we wouldn't have other currencies, but the US dollar is the first currency to go with. And then we build out. We build out from there. That's what led to then say the US, audience versus the other way around.
So it's the currency, the USD, not necessarily the users.
So the first decision was which currency, and then if it's USD,
what country?
Then the most obvious country is America.
Makes sense.
First, and then you go from there, right? But also saying that anyone in Africa would most likely, if they had a choice, USD, GBP, Euro, right? Most people will pick USD to put their money in. That was also a decision point.
Okay, makes sense. And the US product, I have to be in the US to use it.
You don't have to be in the US. You just have to have a US residential address. So in my case, as an example, I do have a US residential address. And it's not that I even own a home. It's actually just that my in-laws' house is an address that I've used a lot. And so we can we actually programmatically, it's really amazing, the KYC and compliance systems. But we can automatically tie my name and my details to that address.
Interesting.
Right. And if we can't, then we ask you for proof of address. Right. And so there's a lot behind the scenes that we do on KYC around this. We recognize that that's a barrier. Like right now, it's been a month since we launched, and we've had 3 times more people try to get the account that haven't been able to. And that just tells you the barrier. And then we know that there's a ton more that have not even tried just because they know they can't get it. So we're coming. We'll solve that. But one of the big solves for it, which I'm really excited about, is our partnership with PayPal.
So PayPal for Africa now partnering with you.
And so PayPal, we are, we're building PayPal for Africa, and now we're partnering with PayPal. And there, it's for everyone in Nigeria. It's very focused on Nigeria, right? For the first launch. And the idea here is very simple for PayPal, and for us also. It's that today, people who open a PayPal Nigeria account cannot receive money because they don't have a way to get the dollars to Naira, right? And so the partnership we've done with them is where you can link your PayPal account to your Paga account. And within the Paga app, you'll see your PayPal balance. And you can withdraw money from your PayPal account into Paga. You can also top up your PayPal from Paga. And you can also push your card from Paga into PayPal. And then you can go use the PayPal app and you go shop wherever PayPal is accepted around the world, right? And so for us, from our side, it's about opening global commerce to all Nigerians and giving them that freedom, right?
Question, right?
Yeah.
How does that feel? Because if we take back to my first question, right?
Yeah.
And what you're describing now was the vision you had then.
Yeah. It's amazing. I actually went to go look at one of my earliest decks and like PayPal for Africa, right? And it's really cool. And it's I was talking to someone who used to work at PayPal, and she was like, Tayo, it's taken 6-7 years because when you first pitched us this idea that we should do something together. And I'm like, yeah, it's taken a long time, but like here we are, right? So we're really happy that they came around to it and said, hey, we'd like to do this with you. What do you think? And so it's really neat. And so for us, it's about like, let's get this going. Let's get it out there. And let's build and let's give Nigerians the freedom to thrive, right? Like through this, now you can easily use PayPal, and now you'll be able to receive money on PayPal, right?
Yeah.
So anybody can send you from anywhere in the world. You can go anywhere and use that PayPal account. And you can, within the Paga app, create a PayPal account. So you can even, within the app, create a new PayPal account or link an existing Paga Nigeria PayPal account. A PayPal Nigeria account.
As you're talking, something that comes to mind is, I think, I'm learning more about timing. So I'm seeing this with Paga where you might come in as a founder and have an idea, but it might just not be the right timing. Yeah. Your goal is to find out how to survive. Yeah. And something in the world could just change. And next thing you know, then you're 100x. Yeah. With the global companies like Replete or like N88, where they've been doing stuff and it's man automation and AI just comes. But the goal is figuring out how do you stay alive until maybe that new vision, something comes up and is able to take it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to interrogate, right? Because like I said, I mean, you could argue that sometimes it's also not a bad idea to say, hey, I tried and I wasn't, at the right time for that idea. Maybe somebody else would do it later. So I think every situation is different. So I hesitate to say that everybody should follow that script, right? Because you do have to look at the tea leaves in some things as well. But that said, but we've seen the story. Look at Microsoft, right? There are times that people call Microsoft to be dead, right? Look at Apple, right? A lot of people don't realize this, but Microsoft had to invest in Apple for Apple to survive, to be where it is today, right? And they've just reinvented themselves over and over, right? So I do think there is something about, and I think for me, the first thing, and I think this is also true for Jay and my leadership team, is that we're playing a long game. We're not playing the short game, right? If we're playing, and we could actually spend time talking about the companies that have come in this market that are clearly playing the short game. There's still some in here that they're playing the short game. And it will work for them. They'll become multi-billionaires, they'll become multi-millionaires, etc. It'll work for them for that game. But that's not what we're playing. We are really, I really feel like on a God-given mission, right? To change the face of Africa, right? And to really help people get access. I really want payments and financial services to truly be an afterthought. And what do I mean by that? Is that, if I think of my life when I was in the US, I walk into a car dealer, I want to buy a car. I walk into a car dealership. I don't think about how I'm going to finance that car before I walk in. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this car. But once I'm only thinking about what car I want. And then I test drive and I pick a car. And once I pick a car, they tell me the price. I haggle. And once I haggle enough and we agree, then I sit down and I fill out a few forms and they submit it and I get my approval. And they give me the keys and I walk out. Right? And in fact, I remember the time when I was buying a car to bring to Nigeria. And after picking up the car, after negotiating on the price and everything, and I said, you need to give me a further discount because I'm paying cash. He was like, what? You're paying cash? I was like, yes. He's like, I've never seen anybody pay cash. Literally, that was he's like, why are you paying cash? I'm like, I'm shipping the car. So if you're shipping the car, you have to buy it outright, But I'm going to put up American Express. So I'm giving you points, So that one, I did have to call American Express just to make sure they add enough for limit because they were like, what's this $20,000 just coming in? They're like, fine, go ahead. But I had the cash to pay them because I just wanted the points. I think, but that's how much of an afterthought it is, right? And that's what I want for Africa. And I don't think we will be the only ones to solve this. It takes a lot of people to do it. But that's really what's driving me on the team.
In the 16 years you've done this, and I keep saying 16 years because it's such a marvel to me, just FYI.
Yeah.
What have you learned about the average Nigerian user?
Oh, wow, that's really, really interesting. Well, first thing I've learned about the average Nigerian, which I actually wish we changed as a people, is that we don't use any product out of loyalty of it's Nigerian. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of other countries are different on that. Even Americans, right? Americans buy American, right? There's a buy American, we support American, right? Nigerians are not like that. But once you understand that, the wisdom is the beginning of wisdom. So that's one. But I think the other is that they're actually very trusting, is that they will try. Trust is about we'll try, and then if you fail us, then we don't. But we will give it a go. Right, and they're very willing to give something a chance, right? And then the other thing I've learned is that if you do get it wrong, and you're honest, they'll give you another chance, right? It's the trying to not be, honest about there was a mistake that then comes back, and then they will be vocal about you, right? When they love something, they will be vocal about it, right? And so I think that's really cool.
I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
English questions anyway. What's one problem in Africa that you think no one is bold enough to tackle yet? But they should.
One thing that no one is bold enough to tackle yet. Letting go of, actually talking about hiring and firing a significant portion of governments, people in government. Yeah.
Okay.
Bringing in fresh blood, right? And And then on top of that, so I'll answer two. So sorry, I'm very Nigerian. So then the second one is tackling fair justice, right? And I think between leadership, which is what the first one was really trying to tackle, people who are saying that I am going to put the greater good before my personal need. And I think we just have to let go of a ton of people to do that. That's one. But then the second is that we want to know that if two people commit the same crime, the justice is the same.
Okay. Rapid fire, just a little bit faster. Okay. Leadership lesson you've learned so far?
Wow, the hardest leadership lesson I've learned so far, I would say, is, the hardest leadership lesson I've learned so far, I would say, is being able to let go of things that I have held onto, and that other people are bringing other views around.
What's the best decision you ever made that scared you first?
The best decision I've ever made that scared me first, I would say, is to build Paga from scratch. The application. We were initially going to license it from someone else. But best decision we've made.
If you had to go back 16 years and do it all over again, would you still do Paga the same way?
Not exactly the same way.
Well, you still do it.
But I'll still do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Describe building in Nigeria with a song.
Oh my God. Let's get jiggy with it.
What's a book or idea that has shaped you fundamentally?
A book that shaped me. Wow, that's a tough one. Look, I think one book that definitely impacted my journey, and I probably wouldn't be here without it, is Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. It's a short book, but it really shaped a lot of my thinking. And then the other, I would say, is Phil Knight's memoir that I talked about earlier. Yeah, Shoe Dog.
Makes sense. Capture one sentence that captures Paga's purpose today.
Freedom to thrive. We want Africans to have the freedom to thrive.
That's a really good one. What's one founder you deeply respect?
Jeff Bezos.
Why?
Yeah. I think he is incredibly brilliant, but I think I really, from what I've seen of how he executes the business, I really appreciate the approach of particularly this idea that when you go into a meeting, people don't pre-read coming into a meeting. So let's write our thoughts out, and let's actually write in prose, because then you can actually flow your thoughts. And then let's read, and let's have a study time. And then we read, and then we discuss.
Yeah,
right. I really like that.
Really like it too. Final question. What's one mistake that you hope that other founders, early stage founders, will not make?
For early stage founders, I would say is leaving money on the table. Right? I think in my first round, I left money on the table. I didn't take investments from people who were willing to come and invest.
Right.
So I could have raised a bit more. I think the first two stages actually. I did.
Okay. So raise as much as you can.
So I'd have raised more. Yeah.
Interesting.
And with additional capital, I'd have taken
raise as much as you need at the moment, especially when you're very early.
But I think our market's a bit different, and I think you just don't know where things are, right? So I do think there's value in the idea of take more money off the table. Don't let the valuation be the key problem right now, or give liquidity as well. But either way, I think those are two things that I'd have done.
Okay. Final question.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you want people to take away from your story as an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be founders, just anybody. I listened to Tayo's story of building Paga, listen to how it has changed it. Like, forget everything else, just take this from my story.
Yeah, I would say, just the idea that, you can dream big and start and just put one foot in front of the other and go. But go with others, right? My favorite African proverb is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that going together means like being brutally honest, being open, and doing right by others. And so doing that again and again and again and again, and building that muscle to do that. And even when it's tough, to have the tough conversations, to have it, and to go again, right? I think that would get you very far. And I think that's been the story of my life so far. And the journey is continuing, right? And, we'll see where it takes us, right? But while we're here, I have a mug. My favorite mug at home says, "Enjoy the journey."
Enjoy the journey. That's a good one. Tayo, thank you so much for having this conversation.
No, it's been a pleasure.
It was great. It was
Real
fantastic.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Founders Connect. I hope you took something from it. I hope you learned something, got inspiration, or just felt like this was relatable. Make sure that you leave a comment, you share this video, but also don't leave this channel without subscribing. I'll see you in the next Founders Connect episode. Peace.